smile, every hug, every kiss, every touch, every person in my life that I care about and love. But wait, maybe I'm getting too emotional. That's exactly what they say you ain't supposed to do. Suppress your feelings, never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon' be lit. And you are now rocking with Celeste, the therapist. Let's go. Smile, every hug.
Hi, beautiful people. We usually come on at 8. I had a little technical difficulties. But if this is your first time in my podcast, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate you. I come on, I talk to people that are doing things to empower the lives of others. And I do that by sharing their story. And the goal behind this is to help you shift the way you think. I believe that we tend to get stuck in the way that we think about things. And because of that, I feel like sometimes we don't feel like we have a way out of our situation. And I always tell people that, we have options, we have choices, but we have to understand that that's the case. So before we start, I wanted to tell you about 2 quick things that I have that will be helpful for people. I have a free wellness will assessment. I literally have a 10-minute video where I kind of break down these different areas of our lives where, spirituality, emotional, intellectual, physical, social, environmental, financial, for people that are listening on the audio, the wellness will. You can Google wellness will and see it. Where, a lot of times we may be struggling emotionally, but it feels like our whole life is falling apart. So it's important, I think, for us to really break down these areas and not just see where we're doing well at, but also see where we're struggling at and come up with like solid plan to work on it. A lot of times if I'm planning for something, so if I'm struggling in an area and I find myself planning for it, I feel a little bit better about the course of my life. If I am struggling in an area, I'm not planning for it, I'm just on the struggle bus, it tends to be a little bit rocky. So, if that's something that you want to look at and see what that's a great start to do. And the other thing I have going on, I have a community called Shifting the Way You Think. The next cohort starts in January, and it's a 3-month membership-based community for people looking for accountability, anyone looking to shift the way they think, and a solution-focused way to deal with your problems. We have weekly videos from me with homework assignments every single week sent to your email or your phone. Also, there is a monthly masterclass that I do. Along with that masterclass, at the end, there's a question and answer series. And it's a really good way for you to be a part of a community and also get tools that you need to help you get through your day. And I know a lot of times people tend to not know where to start. And so, there's so many different ways to start, which is why I have so many arrays of different people on the podcast, because I really want people to understand so many different areas affect your life, right? I have somebody that specializes in mold removal coming on in a few weeks, because if you have mold, if you're living with mold in your home or in your space, it can affect you physically, it can affect you mentally. And a lot of times in America, we are not taught how to think for ourselves. We're on autopilot, and we don't understand that there's so many things in our environment that can affect us. And because of that, we just continue to struggle. So I'm going to bring on my special guest. I'm going to have him introduce himself to the audience. I'm streaming on Periscope. Hey, Periscope, Facebook, and YouTube. For people that are listening to this on the audio, you can find me live Mondays and Thursdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, streaming. So I'm going to introduce Jermaine Morris to the podcast, and he has been here before. Everybody who has watched and followed me knows exactly who he is. Can you introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Hi, I am Jermaine Morris. I work as a certified disc coach and consultant. I host a program called A Cold Cup of Coffee, and I'm the co-host of the Say Something podcast.
Tell people about the podcast that you host.
So there's 2 shows. So I did a radio show for almost 8 years. That's A Cold Cup of Coffee. And so that's more rooted in personal development, things along that nature, kind of kind of principles to kind of make better decisions or how we live. And it's tied into pop culture and a bunch of stuff, you know, it gets covered on that show. The Say Something podcast, it's Say Something with Jermaine Morris and Barry Axius. That's where we cover more social events, things that are a little more community-based, things along that nature.
Okay, that's good. And speaking of personal development, one of the things, and you can find Jermaine on Facebook and on Instagram, spitting some kind of knowledge that can help you get your mind right and shift the way you think. So one of the things about what you did recently that I noticed, you talked about red flags and you talked about strengths. A lot of people don't look at their strengths, they only look at their weaknesses. Tell people a little bit about our strengths and why we don't tend to actually highlight those in our life.
Well, partially for a couple of reasons. So we may have a natural inclination. It's like your gift, your superpower. What comes easy for you that may be difficult for others. There's something that we may naturally gravitate to. But if it's in comparison to things that we maybe not do so well, we live in a system and a society that beats us up for what we don't know or what we're not good at, as opposed to teaching us how to lean in and maximize what we are good at and where we are strong. So we may have gifts that we downplay. You know, you may be a great reader as a kid in school, but you're constantly getting hit over the head with how bad you are in math. So your whole focal point becomes trying to get better at math as opposed to leaning into reading. We get older and our strength may be in our ability to communicate with others. But you're in a system that's telling you you need to be this over here. You need to be driven. You need to be focused. You need to be trying to build an empire. You need to be trying to become a billionaire. You need to be doing, but you may just love people. Like you have no desire to be rich. Well, I was fortunate enough to learn, a teacher told me, art teacher, ironically told me in high school, he said, figure out something you're good at. You'll figure out a way to get paid for it. Mm-hmm. So instead of chasing all these wild dragons and trying to find, just figure out what you're good at, what you like, and then just lean into that. And for people who are really good with people, they love going to work every day. They love doing what they do every day. And that transfers over into a feeling of happiness. They're passionate about what they do. That carries over into their performance and ultimately their profession, and they make money. Instead of doing something that, you're doing something that you don't care about in an area that you're not strong in. That you don't feel good about the experience because you feel like you're getting beaten up every day in something that you're not strong at. So it's just better about leaning into what you're strong at and what you're passionate about.
Yes, I love that. One of the things, one of my favorite people, Les Brown, says is like, you have to fight everything that society, there's these systems and barriers in place that tells us what we can't do and who we're not. Yeah. And so those messages, you got to really be mindful of those messages that come into play when you are operating in the world. And I think that, there are some people that may follow the corporate world or the way society kind of sets things up, but there's so many people who don't, and they're trying to fit in a box that's just not quite right. Yeah.
This world will fool you into believing, that you are and aren't what you are.
Yeah.
Like it will constantly keep trying to tell you this is how you're quote unquote supposed to be. Mm-hmm. Not based on any criteria of who you actually are. Mm-hmm. So it's not like life gives you an interview and talks to you and asks you your hopes and dreams and then says, okay, this is where you should be. Mm-hmm. It just tells you need to be doing this. You need to go to college. For what? You need to be doing this, says who? Your life isn't complete if you don't have that. Since when? Like, keep trying to give you all kinds of stuff that you didn't ask for, don't want, or don't desire. Right. So about knowing who we are, knowing what our strengths are. I would say it all the time. It was taught to me, and I think it's some of the best phrase. Most people fall short of their hopes and dreams due to an inability to properly self-assess.
Dang, yeah.
Just not knowing what we're working with is enough to keep us on a proverbial hamster wheel, going nowhere, expending all our energy and all our days chasing something we don't even want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the ways that people talk about knowing yourself is through therapy. And I feel like as a therapist, I've really kind of helped people like draw out some things, but that's one of many different ways that are available. And so I had Jermaine, he's been on my podcast many times, but he talks about this DISC assessment, and I ended up trying. I said, I want to see what this DISC assessment is about. And I did. Me and my husband, we did the DISC assessment, and I was blown away at how simple it was to do the DISC assessment and all of the things. I know what my strengths are, you know, and I know it, but to see it laid out on paper was like, oh my gosh, I got to tell the people about this. And so I've sent a ton of people his way and not one bad statement. People are overwhelmed at being seen, you know, and I think like as a therapist, that's one of the things that people enjoy about our connection is that they feel validated. And I can't imagine having all of these strengths, not being able to name it, not having like, what do I do with this, you know, inside of me, and then being able to see it on paper and what that looks like, not just my strengths, but the parts where I struggle in a little bit when I'm under stress. So I wanted to take time today to talk about this DISC assessment because I feel like it's another way that we can help understand ourselves better. Is that okay with you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes. All right. So you're the expert. So I want you to start with exactly what is a DISC assessment. I'm going to put this up really quick, and then you can let us talk to us about that.
Okay.
So for people that are listening, this is he talks about the DISC assessment and the coaching, how it allows you to look for removing the blind spots surrounding perception of your own performance, tools and techniques to improve teaching, study habits, and management skills, improve communication. So with staff, students, customers, and relations, because a lot of times this is done in the corporate world, and an action plan tailored to address an individual challenges, efficiency, effectiveness with the information and consultation from the assessment. So can you tell us a little bit about what that even means, the DISC assessment?
Okay, so the DISC assessment in itself has been around for over a century, so it's not a brand new thing. And there's thousands of variations. So there's sometimes people will hear, oh, I took one of those tests in my job or with staffing or something. You can use it. There's all kinds of variations. I like this particular one for a couple of reasons. So one, the DISC assessment, it just naturally shows our natural preference to how we like to deal with things. So it doesn't mean we're this for all situations, all time, for all things. It just means that our natural preference, how we would prefer to deal with problems, people, pace, and procedure. And I like this one because it shows our natural, which is who we are when we roll out of bed. If there was no external stimuli, no one speaking to us, we're not aware of other people, how we would naturally operate in the world. And then it shows our adaptive, and that's who we become when we're aware of other people, we get under pressure or get under stress.
Well, the adaptive part when we're under stress and around other people, do you think, I feel like we're born and we are this free spirit. We're going to fall and we get up. Nobody cares. We don't care that people see us fall. As time goes on and situations happen, do you feel like our default ends up being adaptive, where we get used to living under this stress and pressure and we forget who we are naturally?
It depends, because some people's natural and adaptive are the same.
That's true.
Like there's some people who, if this is the way you make decisions, this is the way you make them. It doesn't matter if you're under pressure. Doesn't matter if you're willy-nilly, just kicking it, whatever. Like that's just how you do it. Some people just love being around people. They love being around people when they're happy. They still love engaging with people when things are going crazy. Some people, though, love people while things are great. But when things start to get a little rocky, they become reflective and introspective, and those people shut down. And so you'll see a huge jump from who they are naturally to their adaptive is like, okay, it's game time now. All the jokes, all the playing, all the talking, that's over. And they go into their hole, they go in the lab and get to work. So you'd see a huge margin shift from who they are naturally to who they adapt to.
And people may not even be able to identify this as switching, but they know they struggle a little bit in certain areas, but don't understand why.
Yeah, and for some people, it's not necessarily a switch, it's a mode.
Okay.
So they may not see themselves as reverting or changing. They just know, like, yeah, you can play when it's time to play, but you got to get serious when it's time to get serious. Like you can rationalize and make a a solid case for why you switch it up.
Okay.
Sorry. But then other people are like, until it's pointed out, they're like, oh yeah, I guess I do. Kind of like some people aren't. It's awareness. It's really just, it's how aware are we of who we are. Yeah.
So that's that. So it talks to this one you like a lot because the natural and it talks about the adaptive.
That I like that. One of the things that it breaks down, what really starts to get into is what are our weaknesses, our behavioral preference, our strengths, best environment to tap into those strengths, highlights potential blind spots in our behavior, the things that we may not be aware that we do, or we're not aware as frequently as we do them. Communication styles, the most effective way to approach us and speak to us, the least effective ways to speak with us. Like there's a lot of really great levels of, and one thing that the assessment is good for is because it gives language to our emotions. There's things that we know how we feel, but when we look at them in black and white, because the assessment comes with a 22-page report of us. So I would say human beings will come with an owner's manual. This becomes yours. And when you can see in black and white, see that you can point your finger on it, and then you can articulate it to somebody else beyond just your feelings. You can actually read, this is what I'm going through. Yeah,
I think that part's good, that validation piece, to be able to, say it for yourself. I think we have to know ourselves.
Yeah.
And then if I know myself, I can communicate with Jermaine what it is I need in our relationship. Yeah. And a lot of times people are struggling because they don't even know themselves. I think they can feel it. They have a sense of it, but don't have language. Yeah. And the way we grow up, we are told to be performers, not to check in with ourselves about how we're feeling.
Yeah. And with this, the assessment I think is great. So you can use it so many ways. So you can, like I said, some people hear about it in corporate settings where if you have a certain culture in your business and you had 3 people applying for a job of equal experience and education, you can give the assessment to all 3 and see which one of them fits the culture of your business. So you can use it for staffing or putting together management teams, or you can give everybody the test and see which combinations line up for what you're trying to do. I use it more so socially, people side. So you can do it partnering with mental health with some of the people that we've both spoken to in counseling sessions with couples, giving it to both members, let them understand each other, and then present to each other so they have a better understanding of themselves individually and then where the other one is coming from. And in that dynamic, you can start finding that a lot of the things that we may have been taking personally really have nothing to do with us. I work with a youth, the Team Effort program is basically the blanket program with adults in some corporate and personal settings. The Ascension program is a youth development program. And so I'll use the assessment with like high school age children to help them learn about themselves, their decision-making practices, how they approach things, how they deal with things while they're young before they've made have made decisions that have real hard consequences attached. They learn how they make decisions and they learn their tendencies young so they can get ahead of some things before they're really out there in the world.
That's good. And I know the youth is a population that you really enjoy working with and kind of giving this assessment to. Talk a little bit about why that's important to kind of start this mindset shift early on.
Number one, because I wish I'd have learned about it myself when I was 15, 16, 17. And so when you learn how you make decisions, you learn, do you lean into being a decision maker? Do you fall back when pressure hits? Or do you engage with people? Do you fall away from people? Do you like to work in a well-structured, predictable pattern? Do you like things to be constantly in flux and flexible? Are you really about rules and protocol, or do you just always fly by the seat of your pants? Like, if you learn all that, who you are at 16, that will help you as you move forward. You may need to. So what I'm about is self-assessment, self-awareness without judgment. So we don't go through and say, this is what's quote unquote right or wrong with you. This is what is. So if you have a natural inclination to do certain things, some of them you may want to lean into, other ones you might want to put buffers around you or other things in place to offset the things that you do. So if you're somebody who you can be super social when things are fine, but when things get a little shaky, you go in your shell because you're really trying to figure stuff out or work things through in your brain. You have to understand, to anybody who's emotionally vested in you, you've just shut down. So to you, you're like, nah, I just need to go in the lab and figure this out. To them, you block them out and shut them out.
Yes.
So if you know you have a tendency to do that, then a thing to put in place is not necessarily that you stop doing it. I'm not saying you need to change your behavior. It just means that you may need to include a certain degree of communication to the people that are around you. Okay, when things start to get this way, I go into a hole and I work things out in my brain. I'm not shutting you out. This is my thought process. And you communicate that to the other person, and that changes the dynamic as opposed to them just feeling like they're left out in the cold and you just doing what you do. So sometimes it's identifying what we're doing, our behaviors and stuff, and then putting other things in place around what we do.
I like that example you gave. I feel like it would work well with in relationships where everybody comes from different backgrounds and our childhood traumas kind of come into play, and then nobody's talking to nobody because we're internalizing what each other are doing. Yeah. So I think that's like a perfect example on how people can look on reassessing or identifying it. One good feedback, I got many good feedbacks about you, but one good one is some of the things that people may have looked at as a flaw, you kind of help people kind of shift that thought process about that. Can you talk a little bit about how some of the things that maybe you were put in the corner for talking too much or whatever, and you may have looked at yourself in a negative way when, I think that speaks to a lot of not being able to fit in societal standards. Right. But how can people look at that part about, instead of thinking of the way that they are in a negative way just because they don't fit the norm?
So there are some people who are naturally, we'll just call it slow. Like they really like to think things through. They really want to have everything mapped out. They're the measure twice, cut once. They want to have everything structured out and laid out. So if you're in a society that keeps telling you you don't move quick enough, you're slow, you're this, you're that, whatever. No, you're just methodical and you're analytical and you want things to be correct. So you may just need to be in the environment you're in is what's the problem. It's not your behavior. If you're somebody who talks all the time and you always running your mouth, you this, that, talkative, you ain't never going to get no work done. All you do is run your mouth. You're not in the right environment. All I do is run my mouth for a living. Like all I do is talk. I take in information, I relay information. All I do is communicate. You just need to figure out what that is. People will tell you you're too abrupt. You're too mean. You're too harsh. You're very decisive. You're straight to the point. You're off-putting. People are intimidated. People are afraid of you. It just means that you're somebody who's decisive. You know what you want to do. You know where you're trying to go. And you may not be the friendliest about how to get there. So you need to be in an environment that allows you to be that way. These are things that, like, I don't tell people who you are is wrong. You and your life will dictate if that's wrong. Like if you say I exhibit this type of behavior and it is not serving me, I want to let this behavior go or change this behavior. We can talk about that and implement some new behaviors and some new things to change your current way of doing things. But if you're like, I don't want to change me, I just want to figure out how I can make me work, that's different. And then putting you in a position to where you can still be you, just getting you the right surrounding and the right environment to do it.
Yes, I like that. And a lot of our environment is spent working. And so when you think about environment, how often do you see people in places of work where they've been doing for a long time, but they find themselves so miserable, not recognizing that the way that they are may not quite fit that culture?
A lot of people. Yeah. Like realistically, most people don't like their jobs. Mm-hmm. Really, in America, most people don't like their job. It's enough. The salary is enough to pay bills, or it's got good benefits. It's a retirement plan. It's before COVID, we felt safe with it. You thought it wasn't going anywhere. You take a job for a multitude of reasons. Very rarely is it because you're passionate about it or you like what you do.
I like what I do.
It's a small margin of folks out there who really get up, spring out of bed and love what they do every day. Most people don't. And so you find something about it that you like doing. Mm-hmm. There's coworkers you enjoy. The job, you could take it or leave it, but you like the people you work with. It would be, things along that line. So when it comes to the environment, so first off, if you don't know who you are and you don't know your gifts, you don't know the best environment for them. It's almost like if I just gave you a handful of random seeds and you didn't know what these seeds were going to grow into, but I said you need to plant them and have them flourish. Well, if you don't know the difference between a rosebud and an orchid, if you planted a rose seed next to an orchid seed and planted them in the exact same pot in the same environment, one would grow and one would die. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like if you don't know what you're working with, then you don't know the environment to put it in. So the first thing is starting with, well, who am I? What are those strengths? And then putting myself in the environment. That's why I like working with kids, because you figure out who you are before you end up somewhere. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes before you end up with someone, because environment is not just your job. It's not the city. It's the people you surround yourself with and that energy transference of who you deal with on the regular. If you don't know who you are, the probability of you picking the right mate is not as high. That's why people will get together young. And then as you figure who you are out as you get older, the two of you look at each other like, why are we doing this? Mm-hmm. As opposed to figuring out who you are and figuring out who you need.
So if have you had parents come to you in regards to working with their kid around this area to get like the assessment? Has that happened?
Yeah. So there's a couple of groups that I work with. So one is the Voice of the Youth. It's a nonprofit out here in Sacramento. I work with Escape Velocity. They work with young boys and girls. I just worked with this group called We Can Work It Out. It's an organization that bases itself on teaching young people about being entrepreneurs. So as opposed to growing up to being employees, it teaches them at 12, 13, 14, 15, the basis of how to start their own business. And so I was just working with them. And so working with kids through organizations, then usually a parent will hear about it, or, the friend of a kid who was in one of the organizations. Well, what was that again? So I'll start getting parents who start, can you give that to my kid? Can you, and then usually the parent ends up wanting to do it after the kid does.
Got it. So one thing I'm going to do, I was trying to stall because I just realized that I can put up my score so that we can go over what DISC is. Okay. So that this is just one part of, actually, I can share my screen. I just forgot about that. So I'm letting y'all into who I am.
Pulling back the curtain a little bit.
Pull back the curtain a little bit. So you guys can see.
Is good for the audience,
Yeah. Yeah, so you guys can see all of my stuff. Let me share. Share screen. All right. So for people who are listening to this, if you go to YouTube, you can actually see what it looks like. So I take this test just for the audience. I take this test and it spits out this crazy paperwork where I'm like, how Jermaine read me like that, yo? So this is back in July. All right, so it spits out these DISC. Can you explain to people what my score says about me in this diagram? Okay.
So the D, the I, the S, and the C. So the best way we kind of break it down is like if you've been on a flight before. So it's also referred to this particular form of the DISC as the flight assessment. So the D, the one that's in red, that would be like the pilot. That's the one that's behind the wheel, the one physically in control, physically takes off, flies, and lands the plane. The I, the one that's in yellow, that would be like the flight attendant. That's the one that cares about the experience of the flight, deals with people. Are you comfortable? You need with something to drink? Are you okay? Is everything all right? The S, that's the grounds crew, like clear the tarmac, loads the luggage, food on the plane, a lot of behind the scenes stuff. They're very important to the process, but you may not think about them firsthand when you think about the flight experience. And then the C, the one that's in blue, Those are the air traffic controllers, the ones that do the science, dot the I's, cross the T's, map out a storm 200 miles away, clear this runway for takeoff, this one lands, the protocol, the structure, the rules to the process of flying. So the one that's in color is your natural. That's who you are when you roll out of bed, left to your own devices, no external stimulus, nothing. The gray, that's your adaptive. That's who you become in that shift of when you're aware of people, you're aware of what's happening, or things may be going on that start to get you feeling stress or pressure. So your D is a 17. So beneath each letter, there's 2 sets of numbers. First set of numbers is your natural. Second set of numbers, your adaptive. Whenever there's more than a 15-point jump between those 2 numbers, there's a major pivot that's happening in our behavior. So if it's just 1 or 2, it could just be minor. 5 is not a big deal. But when you start to get about 15 points, that means there's a shift, a noticeable shift in how we operate. So as a 17D, naturally, those are people who are the pilot.
Do you want me to go down to the D?
No, we can cover from this. Okay. I mean, we can if you like, but I mean, but I can go. I know what I'm looking at. We can do it off of this. So D's can find themselves deferring. Don't necessarily have, like, at that level, at a 17, make cautious decisions. Things need to, like, I want to make sure things are okay. They don't really there's not a lot of reckless kind of decision making. Everything is kind of, let me think about it. Let me make sure it's okay. If somebody has a stronger opinion about something, you're probably more inclined to let them go with whatever it is they want, because they seem to care more than you do. Like if they're really passionate about something, it goes from a 17 to a 35. So when necessary, your decision making amps up. Like normally you can just come when things are okay, like I'm not like whatever, but like you kind of can be easy going with it. But when it's game time, you can get,
I'd be like, let's go, let's get this done.
When it's game time, you lean into it a little bit and you can become more decisive when it's time to make a move and finally pull the trigger on something. Your I, that's the flight attendant, is a 67, which is basically poised, kind of charming, like you present well. So it's one thing to be a certain way, but about a 67 I, you present well. Like you make a point to be a certain way. So that's social, that's charming. People genuinely like you. They'd walk away thinking, oh, that's a nice person. Like
they do. They really do.
Yeah. Like at 67 I, that somebody would walk away thinking, oh, she was nice. Like she was cool. And your natural and your adaptive is the same. So even when things are going on, you still make a point to make people feel okay. To make people feel like even if you don't 100% feel it, you want to make them feel that it's okay. Like that's what I mean by the presenting part, that whatever's going on, you want to make sure that that's the feeling. And S, that's the ground crew. So whatever the highest number is in your natural, you'd be referred to a high something. So you'd be a high S. That's the ground crew. 99. 99S is about predictability. It's about a system. It's a structure. Like if this is what we did yesterday, I am fully expecting that this is what it's going to look like today. May find yourself a little resistant to change, like not just changing something just for change's sake. That the pace you may be referred to as slow. It kind of goes in line with why the D is a 17, is that things are kind of thought out, things are real structured, things are very methodical, things are set. Now the adaptive goes from a 99 to a 53. That's a huge swing. So a couple of things can happen in that space to where either things become overwhelming and you just kind of just take your hands off it and just say whatever. That could be the result of, so this would be a case where we would have conversations like we did. This could be that could be an example of like procrastination, where when you naturally do things, you take a lot of time, but then you get to a hurried pace because you push something for so long. And now you have to do a lot of catching up to a particular deadline. So there's a big, huge shift in the pace in which you work. Sound like you? Mm-hmm. And we haven't talked about this since we went over it that first time. And then your C, that's the air traffic controller, 67. So that's basically like that's an analytical approach. That's rules are the structure. There's a right way to do something. Like there's an actual protocol to be followed to make things happen. Now, the adaptive jumps, just like the S jumps, so probably for the same reason. When you take your hands off it, just say, forget it, whatever. I don't care how the rules go protocol, because I've removed myself from the situation. Or like I said, procrastination, where now I just need to hurry up and get done. So I'm not so stuck on the rules and protocol because I put this off to the last minute. So now I just need to get it finished.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Is there any other page on here you wanted me to go down to show people?
Well, this is your information, so I don't know how personal you want to go.
I don't care. I say everything already as it is.
Okay, so go to page 17.
17.
Yeah, I would say 17 is my favorite page in this thing. And page 17 is the page that addresses potential blind spots in our behavior. Oh, God. Yeah, so that's it. Areas for continued improvement. That's it right there. So based upon your behavioral style, can you actually blow that up a little bit?
Oh, no, I can't. Wait, let me try. Hold on. Is it getting bigger or no?
Yeah. Okay, there we go.
Okay.
So examples of things, these are things that we may not be aware that we do, or may not be aware as frequently as we do them. So like just a couple of yours that showed up is that you may become overly sensitive to criticism. Like that could be something that's for some of us, we may not be aware of. We just think that we have a response for it. Oh, they were picking on me. Oh, they were messing with me. Oh, that's not true. And they become defensive when we hear something.
Yeah. And I think like for me, especially when I've worked in the field with other people, if I get an email that I don't like, I used to just email back and get I would emotionally respond. And then I had to learn how to take a step back, and give it some time. But that's definitely true when I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah, like with that 99S, like I said, the level of predictability that you may hold too much to past tradition and procedures and processes. Because that 99S wants things to be a certain way, like a high degree of predictability. I know what I'm dealing with. I know what's expected. I know what's going to happen. I know how this is supposed to go. When people try to introduce new systems, new techniques, there can be a lot of resistance to it. Like, no, this is the system I know. This is the program I put together. I don't want to change just to change, And so these are all things that so when it comes to these, like the blind spot areas, if it's something that you think you do every once in a while, you probably do it frequently. And if you think you do it frequently, you're probably known for doing it. So if you pop in your head like, no, I can see that happening pretty regularly. People know you for being sensitive to criticism. Mm-hmm. But if you're like, oh, I can think of a couple of instances, then it probably happens semi-regularly,
And I when I look at these, like, trust people a bit too much and make it burnt in the process, I think about how I did in the past, and it felt like really natural to do so, and I've learned to curb that. And also another one, promise a bit more than you can deliver, saying yes all the time, I feel like, and learning how, like, you know what, like you may be able to physically do it, but you're going to find yourself feeling like you're struggling. And so, I think what this shows is some clear language. I think because I've done so much work with myself, these are things that I was clear of. I didn't have a blueprint, right? If I had a blueprint, I would have been like, wow, this is what I need. I'm reading this book, 7 Habits of by Stephen Covey.
Covey. Yep.
What is it? 7 Habits of Highly
Effective People.
Effective people. And I think the tools he lays out is what I do, but I never had a blueprint, right? And so one of the things about what I try to do on this podcast is give people like blueprints. And I think and that's why people, when they speak to you, they're always overwhelmed with joy and feeling heard and seen, because it's like, oh, okay, this makes sense. Like this is what I'm dealing with, Yeah,
I'm not crazy.
Yes. Yep.
And I'm not necessarily wrong. Like I said, like the thing is, even if you go through the blind spots, to say that you may hold a bit of a grudge, because when we try to when we put a lot of effort into presenting well, and then we put trust in people who let us down, but we still want to present well, that can lead to a lot of passive aggressive behavior and resentment. So I don't like you right now, and I'm upset with you right now, but I still want you to feel like this is a safe environment and I'm a good person to be around.
I used to be like that too, and I stopped. That used to be me. Like,
yeah, so I'm not going to cut you out like I want to, or I'm not going to deal with you in a way that maybe might be healthier, that's just more direct. But because I care so much about how I present and the environment that's around me, I'm just going to swallow this resentment, this anger, this problem, and I'm just going to hate you silently. So when you say, okay, well, is this a good behavior? I'm not even telling you it's wrong. Let's just establish that it is. So if you have a tendency to hold a grudge and you're okay with holding a grudge, then understand this is going to play itself out in relationships that you have. If you don't like it, then here's some steps about more effective communicating to start getting some of this off your chest so you're not burying yourself with this weight that comes out and manifests in passive aggressive behavior.
Yes, I love that. That's so good. So that's your favorite. Yeah, you could take the test. That's your favorite page. Any other pages you want to highlight before I get off of this?
Yeah, so 15. You were just strength-based insights. These
yeah, why we didn't start with my strengths, Jermaine?
These are yours. I said the ones with my favorite page because I learned the most from the blind spots. So this is like your superpower page. Like if you go to a superpower, what can Spider-Man do? He can climb up walls, he can swing. What can Superman do? Here's your list of attributes.
Let's make sure we blow this up for the people.
Make a big poster of it. I would tell people, like, if you have a job interview or a review or something, they're like, what are your strengths? I said, you can literally read this page verbatim. You can really just copy this page and just say it. Like for you, is that you're able to provide strength in both the people side and technical side of projects and operations. Brings a unique combination of accuracy, intuition, and good people skills. Able to get along with a variety of other styles, meaning those different D, I, S, and the C's. Able to negotiate through conflicts and create win-win solutions. Like these are all things that are very proficient in your area of expertise, generates positive enthusiasm for a variety of projects, excellent at motivating others towards the team goal.
That's me all the way. You ain't saying no lies there. No lies told.
These are all strengths that you have. So we'll do one more page too, because I like how they work together. So these are your strengths. So if you go to the next page, 16, this says ideal job climate. This is the ideal environment that you can lean into your strengths. So you need an environment that's a favorable working climate with positive attitudes and optimistic spirit. So when you're in that environment, that helps bring out the superpowers from the other page.
Yes. Don't come to me with that nonsense. We need some positivity. That's how I work.
Clear responsibility and lines of authority to avoid confusion and overlapping initiatives, where you have a clear understanding of what are my boundaries? What am I responsible for? How much power do I have, if I have any? Like what's a clear, where's the fence at for me? So I know I can maximize what I can do. These types of things that are on this page show the strength, like the best soil for the gifts that we have. And with this test, we're all individuals. So all these results are different for everybody who takes it. So the best environment for you may be, job culture where there's little hostility, confrontation, or anger. That primarily goes into that 17D you have. But somebody who say is a 90D doesn't care about that. They thrive in the competition. They want to mix them up. They like that environment. So they'd have a completely different, environment that's to their strength.
So if I'm in that environment where there's a lot of competition, I might find myself struggling because that's not the type of personality that I have. Yes,
because that environment, that confliction, maybe the hostility, confrontation, anger, your strength is in your ability to communicate, to bring people together, to create a positive, optimistic atmosphere. Well, you wouldn't be feeling that yourself. So the level that you could give out is going to get diminished. And then you're going to be using a lot of your mental and emotional energy just dealing with the environment you're in and not using it towards accentuating the gifts and powers that you have. Like the issue with a lot of us is we're using a lot of that emotional and mental bandwidth just to deal with where we are. And so we have nothing left to use our gifts. You can't fly. Your strength is gone. Your speed is missing. Because you used everything just to deal with where you're sitting at. The type of people who are talking to you, the way they're talking to you, the energy and the space that you're in, what's required of you, how they want you to do it. You're just on the defense all day, And so now when it's time, well, tap into your gift. You're like, with what? like with what? And it's almost like those boxers who just keep getting hit. You're like, punch back. As soon as I drop my hands to punch, I'm about to get knocked out. I'm spending the entire fight like this. And that's how a lot of us are in our relationships, in school, in our jobs, the environments that we're around. We're on the defense all day. The difference is, you can tell when you're in an environment that allows you to tap into your gifts, you go home at the end of the day looking for something to add to your list. When you're on the defense all day in the wrong environment, you're spending, at the end of the day, you're trying to take stuff off your list. So if you're in an environment that's conducive, you're like, all right, I knocked the day out. Let me work on this 5,000 piece puzzle. I'm gonna go work on the garden after work. I'm gonna go do this extra, because all that emotional, mental energy you had, you put it into your power, and you still have more. When you've been on the defense all day, you were like, I was gonna go to the store, but I'm gonna wait till tomorrow.
Dang,
I was gonna do this, but I'm gonna put it off till the weekend. When you're drained, you're taking stuff off your list. When you're energized, you're adding things to it.
And it sucks because it's not like I put my hand over the fire, I'm burning so I can see the effects immediately. Most people can't see the effects and don't understand the cause and effect on what's happening with them.
No, are you familiar with the boiling frog experiment? Was that? Ready to quit this job? I'm sorry for you, Donald.
I'm sorry.
That boiling frog experiment where they put a frog in a pot of cold water and they gradually raise the temperature, and they do it in such slow increments to the point to where the frog boils and dies in the pot. Now, if you'd have taken the frog and dropped it in the hot water, it would immediately jump out. But since they put it in the water while it's cold and they slowly raise the temperature, it happens in such slow increments that it doesn't resonate like it should, to the point to where the frog sits in it until it dies. That's the same way a lot of us operate in the negative environments and energy and spaces that we put ourselves and subject ourselves to. It's in such low increments that it's chipping away at our spirit. It's such low increments, or we're so strong when we start, we can deal with it. But it just slowly chips away after so much time that our expectation of what we should be in and the value we have for ourselves for what we'll tolerate gets so low that we just accept the boiling water until we're done.
Dang, that's giving me chills, Jermaine. That's so deep.
Yeah. So if you don't, so some of us know, like initially, that's why I was using relationships as an example. If you know who you are and you know your value and you know what you tolerate, the first time you hear something that don't sound right, you're out. Oh, you ain't gonna talk to me that way. I don't know who you think I am. Like, I don't know, like where you do that. We don't do that over here. And those people bounce day one. But when you don't have that value for yourself and you don't know what you're working with, you'll take low levels of disrespect to the point to where it can be so excessive, it's normal to you. That somebody from the outside will look like, you let them talk to you that way, and it doesn't even hit your radar anymore. You got a boss that disrespects you, and you charge it to his personality. Oh, he's just a jerk. Jerk or not, you tolerate and accept you don't even hit your radar you're being disrespected. You doesn't hit your radar that your soul is being drained at 40 hours a week. Like it doesn't hit your register that the people you surrounded yourself with chip away at your dreams. They clown you for your ambition. They insult the things that you're passionate about. They talk you out of trying to elevate and excel. You've put yourself in this environment for so long that you don't feel the boiling water. And that starts with not knowing what you're working with to start with.
Yeah, that's deep. Before I close the screen, I just want to point out the last two strengths of literally my job. It says job responsibility involves people, contacts, and a need to be supportive of individual efforts. Like, how on target is that? And then specialized assignments that also involve communicating and working with so many people. Like, that's so dope to me that it did all that from that test.
You found a profession that fits your superpowers, and you created an environment that allows you to lean into them.
That's good. And without a blueprint. So I want y'all to get the blueprint. I did it without the blueprint. So that's my test. And if you're listening to this on the audio, you can catch the visuals of kind of like what it looks like. But it is a 22-page report that spits out immediately. And then tell people about, once they take the test and it spits out the report, what happens after that if they were to work with you.
So there's a process. So the full process from start to finish, if we've never met in life, is that there's initially about a 15-minute consultation we have where I explain to you kind of what we just talked about now, what the test is, how it works, all that stuff. And then we schedule a time to go over the report. So I'll give you the test. It takes you about 15 minutes to take online, or just like I'll send you a link. You can take it on your phone, laptop, whatever to get internet. And then we schedule time to go over it. So you get the test with the 22-page printout report, and then an hour consultation to go over it. Like, I'm going to walk you through what your report is. I always joke and say, if I just gave you the report, it's like sending you to WebMD. You'll be drawing all kind of conclusions that are not real for you. About half the test is self-explanatory, but for those other things, like I'll ask you some questions to kind of qualify the information and make sure that you get a firm understanding. But one of the things that I do with the test is before we even get into it, I ask you, what do you want from this? Like, what do you want to get out of this? So when we go through it and we give you the information, I make sure that you walk away with the answers to the questions that you had when we started. And if there's any, and from there, some people can take the information and run with it. I was kind of look at myself as more like a personal trainer. I'm a coach, but I look like how personal trainers, some people can go to a personal trainer, get all the nutrition information, get all the workout regimen, and then go on their own and they'll be just fine. They're self-starters. They can take care of it themselves. But I also do coaching programs for the people who, okay, I got the information, but I'm going to need help applying it. Or what are some things I'm working on? Like, what are some strategies for specific things? So we deal with stuff like procrastination, about being motivated, things like negative self-talk, things about anxiety in certain environments, the communication and dealing with things, dealing with life and just pressures in general, and putting together strategies specific for what your need is based upon who you are from your assessment, with things that you can do right now. So I give 10, like if you went and saw a personal trainer, he said, go do 50 push-ups as soon as you go home. The stuff that I give you that day, you literally start that night. And so there are things, strategies that you can implement that day to help get you clarity in that area that you want to work on.
I love it. And I'm all about actionable steps that we can do right now. Like, just make it plain and simple. I think sometimes we make it complicated. I get the starting and changing is complicated, but the process and understanding it, it's like we have what we need. I feel like we have what we need, but we don't know how to tap into it. For people looking to do this assessment, you can email Jermaine, teameffortprogram@gmail.com, teameffortprogram@gmail.com. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, you can go to the show notes to find that information. This was good. We didn't plan to show my... Right. So, what I did, that's kind of fits my personality, right? So just do it on the fly.
Yeah, for the people.
For the people. You're like, you sure you want to do it? I'm like, why not?
Other people like, you want to go through a show? Like, it's your information. So, it's just, it's really good. It gives us a skeleton. It gives us an outline of who we are. And for the challenges that we have, I know we like to think that I think human beings are multi-layered and multifaceted, but the biggest thing when it comes to behavioral changes, I think that we do ourselves a disservice. The actual steps to change the behavior is like stepping over a puddle, but making the emotional and mental shift to do it is jumping the Grand Canyon. So it's not what you have. Like when people are like, well, how can you do actionable steps and have such a shift right now? I said, you didn't have this because you talk to some people that we both worked with. it's as soon as they make the mental shift to accept it, all these huge, like all the tumblers in the lock line up and they see all these other things shift in their life. The behavioral things and strategies that like I will work through are not huge, life altering switches. We're doing a couple little behavioral things, some exercises, some information. Like I said, it's stepping over a puddle to actually do the work. It's the mental and emotional shift that I can do it. Once you make that jump, all this other stuff lines up and you just be amazed at how quickly you can see change in results and your whole perception and perspective of what you've been looking at for who knows how long drastically changes.
Jermaine, I'm like legit gonna steal that. Like for real, like that was dope.
I'm here for people too.
I try to see that's what I mean. This is what you do. You give me the right words, right? I say like I want to be mindful of my language because I don't want to promote this like false sense of like change, right? Yeah. And I say it's not as hard as we think it is, but it feels hard. But now I'm gonna tell them, it's like jumping over a puddle, but it feels like you're jumping over the Grand Canyon.
Yeah. The actual behavioral change to things like the exercises and activities we do and the coaching and stuff. Anybody will tell you he's not having me do all this crazy. I'm not the CrossFit of behavioral coaching. I'm not having you do all this insane stuff. The difference is I just need you to buy in like somebody who does CrossFit. Yeah, like, you ever talk to somebody who takes CrossFit? I know. I just need you to buy in like somebody who takes CrossFit. The behavioral activities are real small. They're small little tweaks and stuff here. But once you believe you can do it, that's when all the stuff unlocks for you. Yeah, that's good. But I'll quote you when I steal it. I'll say, I was like, one of my favorite persons in the world. I'm quoting him. I swear, you think I'm joking. You're going to see me in the streets talking like this, and you're going to be like, Celeste, don't forget to quote me. Don't worry. I'm going to see Celeste t-shirts. Oh, this was so good. Thank you so much for all of it. Oh, thank you. And I hope someone finds benefit from it, even if you're not ready to take the test or want to take the test. I think just the knowledge of understanding how this works can be beneficial for people, as they think about their relationships, their job paths. It opens up so many doors that I want the world to know about. And because the podcast streams in over 100 countries, the world is going to know about it. So that's exciting. And they're going to know about my strengths and my weaknesses. For the people. I'm for the people. Thank you so much. No problem. Thank you. And he'll be back next month. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Bye. That was amazing. So let me get this off. How do I get this off? Oh, here it is. Okay. Yeah. So he said CrossFit people walk around telling you they do CrossFit. You can see it in their muscles. Hi, yes, I'm back. I'm actually getting ready to leave, but nice to see you. So thank you for listening. Today's Thursday. It's our last episode of the week. Don't forget, we come on Mondays and Thursdays. I'm talking to somebody who's doing something to empower the lives of others. Jermaine comes on every single month. He has, I miss you guys too. He has about 4, 5, 6 episodes already. If you go to the podcast and search Jermaine, you'll get this kind of information, which is why I always enjoy having him on. And if you want to do the test, make sure you send him an email. It's worth it. I only co-sign things that I believe in, and I believe in this, and I wouldn't be sending people if I didn't believe in it. So thank you guys so much. If you want to learn about me, go to celestetherapist.com. And if you want to follow me on social media, you can follow me on all social media platforms. That's celestetherapist.com. You can also find the podcast on all podcasting platforms. There are over 200 episodes that can help you shift the way you think. And I will talk to you guys on Monday.
Smile, every hug, every kiss, every touch, every person in my life that I care about and love. But wait, maybe I'm getting too emotional. That's exactly what they say you ain't supposed to do. Suppress your feelings, never talk about your pain. Can't appreciate the sun without acknowledging it rains, right? That's right. So this a moment of clarity. And make sure you always protect your energy. You stay focused and your life gon'